Welcome back to the Spirit, Mind and Soul podcast. Today I'm speaking with Kelly, a psychosomatic healer, and Kelly tells me about the traumatic childhood that led her into the work that she's doing now. I really opened up to Kelly in this episode, surprisingly, and I really enjoyed the conversation with her, so I do hope you enjoy this one. And the sound quality isn't quite the best. I hope you can bear with it. It's really worth a listen. Please like the video if you enjoy it and subscribe. You'll be notified when the next episode comes out. Hi Kelly, thank you for joining me today on the Spirit, Mind and Soul podcast. So I'm really looking forward to hearing about your work as a psychosomatic energy healer. Would you call it healer? I would. I would.
Absolutely, yes.
But I know that obviously it was a long journey to getting you into that work and you
Oh, yes, so I have an extensive background in psychology.
yeah.
So I studied a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. That was really the gist of what I really studied. And then, recently I went through a certification for internal family systems, which is really where that somatic part comes in.
Okay.
Because it connects you with your mind and your body, which also helps connect with your soul. And it really helps people who have experienced trauma or abuse anything within your life to just really get straight to those parts that are protecting that wounded self of us, that doesn't want that wound to hurt. And so those protective parts are really working overtime. And I do combine that with quantum energy healing and therapy because to me, we really need to, in order to go within, we really need to learn how to expand ourselves as like not only spiritual beings, but human beings. And it's through that expansion that we can get a more objective perspective on what's really going on and what we're really experiencing, rather than, kind of the tunnel vision experience that we often live in.
Yep.
So.
But in order to get there, when we spoke before, you spoke of your words were it was an abusive childhood. Do you mind talking in as much or as little detail as you like, just telling us a bit about you as a child and what led you to doing the amazing work that you're doing now?
Yeah, I don't mind sharing my story at all because I know that other people have gone through similar things, and being able to share my story helps other people say, I'm not alone, or I've been through that. So, yeah, so early on, from a very young age, I knew that I was different. I was very intuitive. I just saw things so differently than how other people did. But I feel like a lot of that came from having an abusive childhood. My dad, for many years, was physically abusive. He would scream. The one thing about him is he would scream and yell too, but that would only last so long, and then it was like everything would go back to normal, which for me I thought was very bizarre. Like, you just screamed and yelled at me, got physical with me, and then 5 minutes later you're wanting to love me again. So that was really confusing to me as a child. And then I had my mom on the other side of that, very narcissistic, mentally and emotionally abusive, really liked to play on my vulnerabilities, to manipulate. So all of that, the mental, emotional, and the physical abuse, really the physical abuse lasted until I was about 10 years old, and then it stopped. And then it was almost like my dad stepped into the role of my mom of being also emotionally and mentally abusive. And that stayed up until we talk about childhood, but those experiences can continue all the way into my adulthood, until finally one day I was like, I don't need this. Like, I'm a much better person than to sit here and allow other people to beat up on me like that. And I just cut the ties. And since then, it's actually been a very empowering journey. But, through that abuse of just being verbally torn down all the time, you would think that it would crush a person's soul, but I really believe that if you are always going inside and really checking with yourself, what it really does is it pushes you to overcome those challenges, and then that bleeds into other parts of your life. Being able to believe that like I can do anything, like I really can do anything, and so all of that said, it really has led me to the work that I do today. So I'm very thankful that I was intuitive as a child, told that I was weird and crazy, and all the things that a lot of intuitives hear. But I never lost that. I didn't outwardly tell everybody, "Hey, this is who I am. This is what I do."
Yeah.
But I use that as a means to really not let all this abuse crush my soul.
Yeah.
So.
And I would say that we're all intuitive, but some of us just suppress it so deeply that we lose it, and it's so hard to get that back, and some of us don't. But obviously, you've gone the opposite way. You've really tuned into that, and you've kept it, and you've used it, in your work today as well. I was going to ask you because you'd said before, when we spoke before, that your childhood affected your adulthood. So before you, did the work on yourself and the work that you're doing with other people, in what ways did it affect you, your adulthood?
So going through those experiences of in my childhood, the biggest way that it affected me up into adulthood, not only did it create those patterns, right, but there was one connection to every pattern, and that was trusting. I didn't trust people. I didn't, whether that was in my friendships, my romantic relationships, my working relationships. I didn't trust anybody, and it would always, I never got to really be my authentic self. So it was almost like I was hiding behind this wall or this facade of, okay, I'm going to adapt and I'm going to be who you are. But in the back of my head, I was really almost like sizing people up, right? Are they being true to me? How are they going to hurt me? What do I have to be prepared for? Which really is a survival, right? That's very much a survival technique. And that was constantly how I was living, day in and day out. And it was very difficult. As I continued to evolve and really grow, I started to see how my way of living like that was affecting my son. Because it was making him not trusting people. It was making him skeptical of how people were being. And yet he's never had an abusive childhood, but it was me that was projecting that onto him. So he started taking on those roles and those patterns. It was very difficult. So, I want to go back to talking about patterns, because patterns tell so much about ourselves. And, my pattern of abuse, what I was seeking out too was those abusive relationships, to find that love, right, that I wasn't getting. But, that's not how you get love. Like, everything comes from inside. So when I turned that around and really said, okay, I've got to start healing this, I started really loving who I was as a person. Whereas before, I'd look in the mirror and I was like, I don't really like this person, so I've got to put this mask on, right? But I really started loving my own uniqueness, my own my own authentic self. Like, no matter how goofy it was, I was like, this is me. And now when I make connections with people, whether that's friends or romantic partners, I come into it not being this, wearing or pretending to have this fake persona. Because for so long I've had to kind of hide who that person, hide who that person was, because at an early age I learned when I was myself, it wasn't accepted, and it turned into something abusive.
Yeah. So how did that lead you into the work? Do you feel that the work that you went on to do, even back when you were doing the CBT and the psychology, do you feel that it was because for me, I was always intrigued in psychology as well, and I'm doing similar work, mindset work, and I think it was a fascination of reflecting on my childhood and everything, like you say, the patterns and things that transpired from my childhood, that I ended up, like I had eating disorder and, other things in my life. And so I know that that's what's led me to doing the work that I do now. I'm fascinated. Do you feel you're the same? That's what led
Yes,
you to do that
a
connection?
hundred
Yeah.
100%. I don't believe that at the time that I was putting that connection together.
Hmm.
I just knew that I wanted to go into that type of field because I didn't want others to feel the way that I did.
Hmm.
But as my life has continued to evolve and the more healing that I do, I really do believe that that was very divinely led
Hmm.
to get me on to really get me on my path that I am today. And because of it, like, I would never take back anything that's happened in my childhood, no matter how challenging it was. But I wouldn't because I would not be here being able to help guide people in their own empowered energy to find themselves and really embrace that and overcome their challenges too. It's really been a beautiful, believe it or not, a beautiful experience. People
I
often look at me a little weird, but
No, I agree, and I embrace my weirdness as well. And I think we're all walking around with a mask and trying not to explain. I think we're all weird deep down, and we've all got those quirky traits. And some people mask them, and some just let it out. And I think it should be embraced. Um, and what you said about cutting those ties as well. Do you have any relationship now with your either parent?
I don't. In fact, I don't have a relationship with my mom and dad, or my brother.
Mm.
I had to. It was so difficult because we live in a society where it says we have to love our mom, we have to love our dad, we have to, our siblings, we have to stick with them.
Mhm.
So I do love them. I do love them on a different level now. It's more of a level of understanding, but also understanding the importance of accountability.
Yeah.
But cutting those ties was one of the hardest things I ever did. I may get a little bit emotional about it still because, um, I literally had to just let it go.
Mhm.
And the first year was torture for me.
Yeah.
I was fighting with really what felt like demons in my own mind about it, but it was really the grief in my heart that was triggering that because grief comes in so many ways, and it's not only when somebody passes on, but it's when you lose those relationships. And there is time where that grief still comes up because I do miss my mom, I do miss my dad, I do miss my brother a little bit, but
Mhm.
but it hurts. But
Yeah.
again, that healing has allowed me to go inside, but take a step back and really see the experience for what it was,
Mhm.
and not for all those years that I thought it was, which was living in a victim paradigm.
Yeah. I can relate with it because I haven't had a relationship with my dad for over 10 years. So he's never met my children. And I was the same. It's a grieving process. And I feel like so although he's still here, he's not far. You just said there, it's grief, and it is. It's almost like you're mourning that person or a relationship that you had before. But I mean, even if I was to connect now, I don't know if you feel the same. It would actually be detrimental to me mentally. If I was to have that, so that it's almost like there's no choice. You have to cut that tie. But I really, really, what you just said there, grief, it is. You're mourning a person, even though they're still here.
Yeah. And I think we forget that grief can occur in so many different ways. When we're feeling that pain inside, we're really going through those cycles of grief, right? Because one moment there's almost that sense of relief in the sense that you don't have that obligation, that attachment, right? Because now you're free from it. And that does happen in grief when somebody passes over. And then you go through those periods of anger, which is something that I've really been experiencing a lot lately that I've never ever expressed in my entire life. I've never experienced actual anger. It's come as like frustration. So now I'm at that point where I'm really healing that and purging it. But then, there's that sadness that comes along, and then with sadness you have depression, and then it's almost like the cycle, and then all of a sudden you're feeling anxiety because you start thinking, what would that be like if I reunited with them? Would it be the same? Would it be different? And then it's like you kind of go through the whole cycle again. It's challenging and it's very difficult. But but even when people come to me, experiencing similar things, I feel like that's why like somatic work is really important, because you want them to get connected with their body, and then getting connected helps them to go in, and then doing that heart-mind connection is so important.
I was going to say, Kelly, those emotions you just said, like anger and sadness, those are really dominant emotions. How do you navigate through them now? Because this is that you're present. This isn't your past. You're currently going through this now. So how are you navigating through that?
Spend a lot I spent like I keep saying it, like going in. So part of that is breath work, because when you feel those emotions, I'm going to get a little bit sciencey on you. Your nervous system really starts to respond to that. So, and it can respond in a lot of ways. So it can create, most of the time it creates what we call like hyperarousal. So you become very reactive, right? So you allow those emotions when you're in that state to really blend with you, and then you become that. So for me, doing that breath work, slowing down my nervous system. And two, when you slow down your nervous system, you're really telling your body, I'm safe, I'm okay, there's no dangers around, so we can do this work. The other thing too is when we slow things down, here we go, sciencey, the atoms and the particles start to spread apart. And when they're jammed up together, it causes a real sort of denseness or heaviness, and you can't work in between this, right? So when you expand that out, now you've got the space to work, and that's really within that space. That's like, for me, that is pure, untapped energy of just unconditional love, and that's the best space to work from. So I take time to really get into that. And then what I do is I start connecting with my body. Where am I feeling this in my body? Where in my body is it speaking to me? What is it saying? And then I just allow it to come up. I just allow those parts or those different aspects of me to come up. And then I have a conversation with them. Because what I find out is that as I'm talking to them, they think that they're still protecting Kelly that was like at the age of 10, or, at the age of 21, or when I was 4. And they don't realize that, not that I'm going to say my age, but I'm a lot older now. and that within that time I've really evolved and grown. And so it's about, getting those parts of you to trust you, and then asking them to reveal that, would they give you space to reveal that wound so you can be the parent or the person that I always call my wounded self my little Kelly, that little Kelly needed. And then I start working with that to understand those emotions. But the key is trying to unblend from those emotions so that you can see it from a very objective point of view. And that can be hard.
It's very, I don't like to refer to those type of emotions as negative emotions, because I think it's your body speaking to you, similar to what you've just said. It's in there, and if you suppress it, it's always going to be in there, and it'll come out in other ways, and it'll manifest in other ways. You could even say, some people say, manifest into illness. I think, I didn't do this before because I didn't know any better, but I think it's important to let people know that when you're feeling anger, sadness, fear, shame, hurt, these are okay. Your body's communicating with you, and there's stuff to work through, and growth is on the other side of that. And this is what I talk about, so much to anyone in social media, to feel those emotions. And, meditation is a great way of doing that as well. Um, or journaling, whatever works for you.
Yes. Oh, journaling is like my favorite thing to
Mine
do.
too.
But you know what? I wanna say I wanna bring up something that you just said. Like there's growth on the other side, and that growth is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard when you're going through it,
Mm-hmm.
but when you make it out on the other side, there is like it's beautiful because there's a sense of peace and calm, and comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and if you want to go even deeper, you'll find that there's joy and there's happiness and there's love that's connected to that. But you've got to release. I agree. I don't think emotions are negative either. They're just frequencies. I feel like that we bring into our body that we at that time our vibrations are connecting with those vibrations. But as we release those, we can allow room for those other frequencies, those like the happiness, the joy, the comfort, to really connect with our heart center. One of the things that when I work with people, that I also had to learn for myself is, again, it's that mind body consciousness connection, but we talk about our ego, right? A lot of people talk about the importance of dissolving the ego. I am not a believer of dissolving the ego. Like, I believe that our egos are there. They are our protectors, and it can be our ally, right? But we just have to, again, communicate with it. And when our ego is holding on to these frequencies of anger or fear, we have to work with our ego to say, thank you. I have so much gratitude that you're showing me this right now because this is what needs healing. But let's release that. And when I release that, I want to show you those frequencies that I want to be in a harmonic resonance with my body. And so I do a lot of that type of work too, to just really help people understand that we have these amazing aspects with ourselves, and if we allow our spirit and them to work together, so much amazing stuff can happen.
So when people come to you to work with you, where are they at in life normally? What do you see a pattern there?
Yes. So when they come to me, a lot of times they don't even know why. They're like, I'm just here. And usually what I hear is, I've just come for some insight. I want you to tell me what I need to do with my life. And although I do have that intuitive ability to like see into that, and I can give them that information, but I can also see where the healing patterns are that need to be worked through before we get from point A to point B. So oftentimes, as I'm working through them, and I do use my intuition all the time when I'm working with them, what comes up are people who have experienced trauma and their bodies have shut that down, which is a normal response to trauma because our bodies will shut down from that shock to not overwhelm us, and it goes back to that nervous system, but it starts to come out. And when I start talking to them, they're like, oh my gosh, that did happen to me in my childhood. And I didn't even realize that I was repeating that pattern up until now. And so part of what I do is just help them in their own discovery, realize that. Because I could tell you, hey, your mom did this to you all day long, but the body is going to shut down, right? It has to be their own internal discovery of, oh yeah, that did happen. And then comes with that is curiosity, right? Like, well, how do I fix that? Is usually what I hear. And I'm like, well, let's heal it. But I have a lot of people that have a lot of childhood trauma. I do have a lot of people that come to me with that emotional, mental, verbal, and sexual abuse that they come to me about. But it's everything. I mean, truthfully, everything leads to, it really starts in childhood, right? Because that's when we start developing those beliefs that, or we start mirroring those beliefs and then we take them in as our identity, right? And then that becomes the patterns that start to create.
Yeah. And I guess it could even be passed down trauma as well. So you could go
Yes.
that far back. Yeah. So how obviously you want to speak to a wider audience and get this, your work out to as many people as you can. What's next then with the work that you do? What
So, you know, so one thing I do love to do is I do love to work with people on an individual level because I feel like, I feel like whether it's an individual or when you have a larger audience, it takes one person for that to ripple out.
mm-hmm.
But I've really been led to really start to talk to broader audiences. One, I want to bring out the fact that trauma is normal and that we don't need to hide from it. We don't need to run from it. And it's okay to talk about it. Because, again, when we feel that when something traumatic happens to us, oh my gosh, I can't share. What are people going to think? What are their opinions? But I want people to understand that trauma is normal and it's okay. That abuse is not that abuse is normal, but it happens,
Yeah.
and it's okay to talk about it. Um, and so, really, I do want to get out on a broader scale to say, hey, number one, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And number two, there's ways to heal it. You have to be ready to do it. You have to understand that it's not going to be easy. But I can promise you that on the other side of that, like you said, Karen, there is growth, there's beauty, there is self discovery to becoming yourself again. So, being able to you allowing me to be able to come onto your podcast to be able to do that is one of those ways to do that, and I'm hoping that I will be able to do that more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And let people know I want to help. Like I want to be part of your journey if you feel led or connected with me to do that. So
well, that's the purpose of doing this, is to show real people going through, the challenges that, like you say, not, it's not normal for everyone to go through, the like childhood trauma or abuse or whatever it may be, but we've all got our own challenges. No childhood in this world that we live in, no childhood is smooth. There's always something. I wouldn't say that I necessarily had an abusive or awful or traumatic childhood, but there was certainly things that I had to work through as an adult because of my childhood and teenage years. So with the whole point is just to show that it's like you say, it's okay and there's help available. There's, a few years ago I didn't realize just how much support and help and different techniques there was to help our minds, body, and soul. So I hope that even the work that you do is fairly new to me. So I'm loving hearing your story and the work that you do because it does help, and there will be someone out there that can benefit, or more than one person that can benefit from the work that you're doing, Kelly. So as for you, I want to know if there's anything, work aside, is there anything that you're longing for in your life personally?
what? Yes. And really, what I'm going for is I just want to continue forward. And I know it can be an everyday challenge, but I just want to really authentically be me. Like I want to have I like when I get into that world or when I'm with somebody, I don't want to wear that mask. And sometimes because of past patterning, I put that mask back on, but I'm learning more and more that as I really embrace who I am, embody everything that I truly am, like people really do like me. I don't have to be this fake person and hide. Um, and that's really what I just want to keep doing between now and to the time that I, transition over into the spirit world. I really, truly just want to be Kelly Boyer, and I don't want to be anybody else or anything else. I just want to be myself, and it's a daily thing to work on. But
Yeah.
um,
Totally feel that as well, because society says you need to tick these boxes and be this person. And when you realize I don't want to be that person, it's not a straightforward transition. There's a lot of unraveling to do there and digging deep on who am I. So but I think authenticity is attractive, and that's what I think that's a great message as well. people are more attracted to your authenticity rather than the mask. But it's a journey. That's a journey in itself, and I feel you on that. I'm still on that
Yeah.
journey as well.
Yeah, and I feel like it will probably be a forever journey, but each step of that way, when you learn a little bit more and you discover a little bit more, uh, like really your, like to me, your soul opens up, right? That unique soul signature that we all came in to
Mm-hmm.
really starts to shine, and that light that's inside of you gets brighter and brighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really loving the journey. Some days maybe not so much if I'm being truthful, but
Mm-hmm.
I really am loving the journey. It's the freest I've ever been in my life.
Yeah, me too. And is there anything you can share that you feel, a magic moment or something that's just something that's happened in your life that will give others hope?
I don't know if necessarily there's one particular magical moment, because I feel that we're so lucky that we get to have a multitude of magical moments. But when I think of magic that was in my life from the very beginning, I always talk about like my grandmother's being so inspiring. Um, Ooh, this may make me a little bit emotional too. My grandmother she had always stood through me through the good times, the bad times, the happy times, any type sort of time. She was truly my support system. Somebody that I could go to that wouldn't judge me, didn't have an opinion. She just loved me. But she shared so many stories with me. Like, she very much was magical. I don't think that anybody else in my family ever got to experience her intuitive, magical self. I did, which was such a blessing to me. But she went through so many hardships. Medically, emotionally, you name it, she went through it. But she always kept going and always had her sense of humor and her smile. And I remember one day, and I feel like this is when one of the things that really started when I stepped into starting to change my life. I remember I would go visit her every Wednesday, and this was right before she had passed on. I remember asking her, I was like, Grandma, all these things that happened to you, because she would share her stories. I said, how did you have the strength to keep going? And I remember her telling me, she's like, life is about choices. I could have chosen to not go on, and or I could choose to just keep going. And I didn't realize how profound that was when she said that to me. And I remember asking her, I said, well, how did you choose to keep going? And she said, a lot of people make the mistake that when they have a choice, they go up here first to their minds. And she said, when you're in your mind, she's like, what happens is that, yeah, you can get all of the information, but if you take it from your mind to your heart, what happens is that you're not truthful, because you could be very excited about something, but your mind can create that fear that then goes into your heart, and then you don't take those risks to move forward. She said, when you start with your heart, and I'm not talking about, yes, it's important to follow your dreams, but I'm not talking about like, oh, I'm following my dreams and goals. I'm talking about when you go to your heart and you find your truth. She says it's going to show you all of the choices that you have. She said, when you find that choice where it brings you, like we talked about earlier, comfort, security, safety, peace, calm, or joy and excitement and happiness, she's like, and you take that in, she's all, then you take that to your mind, because there's no fear involved in that. And then you can use your mind to, create the details of it, the how to, the details of how I'm going to get there. And she's all, and then when they connect, she's like, they're in harmony, right? She's all, and then she's like, you have everything you need to move forward. And I really understand that now when we talk about the mind-body connection. I know that if I'm in here and I bring it here and there's fear to it, that I need to take a step back and start from my heart and see what choice is mine. But she always told me, she's like, everybody has choices. Even not making the decision for a choice is a choice. Yeah. And she goes, so I don't want you to ever believe that in life that you don't have choices. And that was just so profound and so inspiring to me that I bring that into my, not only my personal life, but my work life too, that you always have a choice. There's always a choice for you. Don't ever feel like you're trapped. And but my grandma was such my inspiration. So I feel like almost every magical moment that I ever had that really helped keeping me moving forward came from her.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for being so open today as well. Yeah, I think I think yeah, even being vulnerable, making yourself vulnerable like you just have today is very brave. And I think the work that you're doing, I can't wait to learn more about it. I'll certainly be following your journey and the work that you're doing. I'm really glad that I came across it. If anyone feels the call to get in touch with you, I will leave details below for them to do so.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh, I'm so appreciative and grateful for you for giving me this time and just spending time with you and talking with you.
I'm grateful
Even
to
this,
be your mum.
I was gonna say, even this is a magical moment, right? To be
Oh,
able to share our stories.
yeah.
So
What a great conversation I had with Kelly. I hope you enjoyed listening. Please do like the video, it would really help me out, and subscribe, and you'll be notified when the next episode comes out.